What it is, cucks, it's your boy the Hater, and it's Monday night, which must mean one thing, and that is Raw review up in this piece, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna do it like we usually do it, segment by segment, so let's get to it. I mean, honestly, this episode it felt kind of old schoolish almost, right? There was a lot here that I enjoyed. My gripes are the same gripes I've had for the longest time, right? There just aren't enough stars. But beyond that, with what they have, they did pretty good. So, the show starts out, and Seth Rollins and friends come out. Braun cuts a respectable promo saying he's the future, that Sami Zayn is a chump who is ugly and doesn't go to the gym. So you know the Hater agreed with everything that Braun said. Bronson Reed then cuts another respectable promo. These are short promos, saying he will tsunami Jey Uso. Paul Heyman then reiterates everything that Bronson and Braun said, adding absolutely nothing. There is no need for Paul Heyman in this group. He adds nothing to them. They can all kind of talk, and Paul Heyman can also kind of talk. I know that he's supposed to be this promo goat, but I just don't believe it myself, right? The only thing that Paul Heyman does add is he says that Roman Reigns doesn't have the balls to show up. Now, this is a dodgy line, because if we're being honest, Roman is a god compared to these nobodies. You know what I mean? That goes without saying. But I think, irrespective of that, Heyman is obviously correct in the assessment that Roman Reigns is being a pussy. I mean, where is he? You know what I mean? Like, this idea of he gets betrayed, he gets his ass beat, he gets humiliated, and then he just doesn't show up to take revenge until probably SummerSlam, that doesn't fly with your boy, you know what I mean? Anyways, it is what it is. That's how the storyline goes, I guess. Rollins will also be competing tonight against Penta in a throwaway match, basically. The crowd wants CM Punk, and I don't know what the hell CM Punk has been doing with his life, but he also, just like Roman Reigns, isn't really going after Seth Rollins, right? He should be doing what LA Knight is doing, going after him week after week, yet he's nowhere to be found. I know that he had his feud, if you want to call it that, with John Cena, but that doesn't change the fact that he's been missing in action this entire time, realistically, against the people that he should be feuding with. Anyways, whatever, right? After this, Rollins gets the mic and says, "Welcome to Monday Night Rollins," and then they all leave, which was really weird. How about you open with that, right? "Welcome to Monday Night Rollins" should be the first thing you say, but because he didn't start with a mic, this has to be the last thing he says. Very weird, but it was a decent opening segment, considering that it involved the number one faction on Raw, you know what I mean? Doing number one faction shit, right? Like, the segment did its job, Heyman called out Roman Reigns, and the three other guys who all have matches tonight pretty much explained that they're going to have matches, and they explained they're going to whoop that ass. This is a classic opening Raw segment, right? Triple H made a career out of doing this. He would come out and he would say, "Tonight, the Acolytes will go one-on-one against none other than the New Age Outlaws." It's that kind of shit. So it's passable. It's not a bad opening segment. After this, we get the obligatory Judgment Day backstage segment. Now they have all this gold, right, which they put on one table. The problem is, of course, that Dominic Mysterio is not an active champion, and the other titles are completely meaningless. Arguably, the Intercontinental title is also completely meaningless. So although Judgment Day have, technically 5 belts and 3 titles, since the tag team titles are considered like one title, right? It doesn't really change anything because they're irrelevant anyways, right? They don't appear to be more serious or more noteworthy or more interesting with the titles than they do without the titles. So this adds absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter if they're the champions or if they're the champions. Nobody cares about the tag team titles. So, but for better or for worse, they do have the titles. They also have a little shrine to Liv Morgan. Raquel comes in, she's not dead, And then Raquel, kind of funny, does a little cross, like a little prayer to the shrine. And basically the whole point is they're moving Liv out and Roxanne is moving in, right? Hopefully this leads to the logical conclusion of Raquel Rodriguez just turning on Liv. That's what should happen. And she finds her new home with the Judgment Day, right? Whatever. This was what it was. AJ Styles has sent a cake to Dom. AJ Styles appears and just looks at Dom. It was weird. It was strange. Why isn't AJ Styles having a match if he's there? I don't know. A lot of things don't make sense about this segment, but that's what the segment was. Don't blame me, cucks. Next up, it's Kyrie Irving versus Roxanne Perez, right? Her name is Kyrie, but Michael Cole keeps saying Kyrie, right? Like Kyrie Irving. That's a basketball player. This is Kyrie Sane. It's a completely different pronunciation, but dumbass Michael Cole, who's been doing this job for like 25 years, can't bother to get it right. Anyways, that happens. The heels beat Kyrie afterwards because Kyrie wins with like a roll-up. But then Kevin Durant, also known as Asuka, comes out to save Kyrie. Whatever. It's exactly what you thought it would be. The match was boring. I didn't enjoy it. I remember when Kyrie Sane was supposed to be this world beater. She was supposed to be the next big deal, and she just isn't. She's like on the same level as Roxanne Perez, and Michael Cole presented Roxanne Perez losing as a massive upset because it probably is. You know what I mean? After this, we get a Sami Zayn interview. He says Sami Zayn shit. You know what I mean? Nothing crazy. He's just like, I'm Sami Zayn. Whatever. Who gives a flying fuck? Scarlett then appears and says nothing. The interviewer girl is like, do you have anything to say, Scarlett? And she's like, no. So a complete waste of time. This is a complete waste. Now, I know a lot of people like Scarlett because they find her to be crazy attractive. I personally don't think she's that attractive, but I get it. The problem that I have with Scarlett is that she adds absolutely nothing. Karrion Kross is already a massive jobber, so him having her doesn't add anything to his presentation whatsoever because, number one, he's never on TV, and number two, even if he were, it's not like she does something interesting, right? She just comes out and lip syncs his theme song and tries to look hot. I mean, good for her, It is what it is. I mean, at least she gets a paycheck out of it. After this, we get another segment. It's Ivy Nile and the Creed brothers talking to Adam Pearce. They talk about Grande Americano, and Brutus almost reveals that it's Chad Gable. This is going like too far, Like this is just getting out of hand now. Like a Grande Americano should have been like a 2-3 week thing. It's been months now. It's been almost half a year, But that's what we get, and we don't get upset up in this bitch. So anyways, after this, Ivy Nile wants to be in the Battle Royal. She's in it, right? Adam Pearce says, good, you're in it. You know what I mean? Like, this is a jobber battle royal. So, of course, you're going to be in it. Like, you're going to be thrown out first, probably. But she's in there. And as this goes, Asuka and Kyrie, Kevin Garnett, motherfucks, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving appear. And I actually enjoyed this second half of this segment because, first of all, Asuka is carrying Kyrie Sane as if she's dead, right? Like, these girls, they just look disheveled as shit, but it was hilarious. And they basically say, we want to be in the tag match at Evolution. Adam Pearce says, fantastic. Why don't you represent Raw and we will have the Kabuki Warriors back. Then Asuka and Kyrie start dancing like all goofy and crazy, and I found it very charming, right? It's what the Kabuki Warriors are known for, just coming out there and acting like complete crazy motherfucks. I actually enjoy them, so I'm actually looking forward to them coming back. I don't really care about Evolution, but I'm sure the lover will force me to watch it, and I'm sure he'll review it because I ain't reviewing that shit, let me tell you that, motherfucks. But we'll see. Maybe the hater will review it. Who the fuck knows? Anyways, it is what it is. After this, Nikki Bella has like a taped vignette. She basically says she's gonna win the Battle Royal, and I guess the winner of this gets a fucking match at Clash at Paris. This just doesn't sound right. Clash at Paris or Clash in Paris? It doesn't sound right at all. Like Clash at the Castle sounds cool. Clash in Paris doesn't sound cool. But the winner of the Battle Royal, presumably, is going to get a title shot at Clash in Paris. So Nikki Bella wants to win. She just looks a little bit horse-faced. Like, Nikki Bella is obviously an attractive girl, but for some reason now, maybe it's her aging, she just looks a little bit like horse-faced. Maybe it's like face surgery or some shit. I don't know, But it is what it is. I don't really care too much about Nikki Bella. She's okay. I'm not sure she's like legendary status, but she is like, she was the diva of her time, right? So she's like the last diva too in many ways. So I do appreciate that, but she's not quite on the level of Trish, and she's not quite on the level of like Becky Lynch either. She was there during a time when nobody gave a shit about women's wrestling. So, but that's not her fault. That's what that is. Sami Zayn then comes out for his match, but gets attacked again by Karrion Kross with a pipe. Karrion beats the shit out of him. Then Adam Pearce and people come and stop him, right? But Braun comes out, and Sami Zayn ain't no bitch, so he wants to fight. For what this was, I enjoyed this. This is one of the most enjoyable Sami Zayn things ever, right? Sami Zayn is only good when he plays this character, right? The character of the guy that just doesn't give up. I know he plays that all the time, but there's different ways to play it. There's the I did it, Khadija, like the guy who overcomes the odds on a regular match versus the guy that's willing to put it out there, right? The guy who's gotten his ass beat with a pipe 2 weeks in a row, and he still wants to fight. So obviously, this match kind of like writes itself, right? Eventually, even though Sami Zayn shows some fortitude, which I don't think he should have shown, I think this match should have just been like, he gets up, he gets speared like 3 times, and he gets pinned, which is exactly what happened, except he got some offense in there. I mean, that's not so bad, but I wouldn't have done it that way myself. But anyways, Braun spears the shit out of him, and Braun wins. Then we go backstage, and we see the Viking cucks. They're talking to Pierce. They're begging for a title shot. Then the New Day come out dressed like widows, right? All in black. And this is extremely embarrassing. This is not funny, right? And this is a great example that, in my opinion, proves that Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods are just dorks. It's as simple as that. They're nerds, motherfucks. They think this is funny. This isn't funny at all, right? Like, this is not manly. You know, there's, at the end of the day, I understand they're like these kind of like almost gay dudes, right? Like they dress like unicorns and they shake their asses at each other. Like I get what they're going for, but it's just not manly enough. You know what I mean? Like Billy and Chuck played literally a gay couple, but they both look like gods. You know what I mean? They both look like they could destroy you. Billy Gunn looks like and obviously can destroy Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston today. And he's like in his 60s. You know what I mean? So there's levels to it. And quite frankly, the New Day, they don't have the manliness to pull this off. And they also don't have the charisma to pull this off. Like, for example, if you had like Val Venus and like Shawn Michaels doing this, it would be hilarious, right? Because they have the charisma to pull it off, right? And they have the manliness too. Cucky, Kingston, and Xavier Woods don't have anything going for them, you know? Kofi Kingston is a surefire, first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion, because he's accomplished a lot, especially given his clear limitations, both in terms of like his appearance, his presentation, and his lack of athleticism. Kofi Kingston is this interesting character. I have to respect him, you know what I mean? He's this guy who's just not very athletic, but he believes, motherfucks. He believes he is athletic, so he's able to do some athletic things, right? Like all those Royal Rumble saves, that was like 10 years of his career. It was just he did nothing for like 5 years. All he would do is just like save his own ass at the Royal Rumble. That was pretty fun, you know? But he's not like an athlete to the level of like AJ Styles or Ricochet or Javon Evans even, right? But he believes he is, and that's pretty cool. I like that. I actually respect that a bit more. But Xavier Woods, this guy's added nothing to this company. This guy's been stealing money from this company the whole time. He's never drawn a dime. Xavier Woods sucks, Like, I think he has good promo abilities, but he's never been given the opportunity to cut serious promos. Like, I think it should have been him in like an R-Truth role, right? In an angry, like I'm being held back, like they tried to do first with a New Day. But that didn't pan out, so that's what that is. After this, Becky Lynch comes out and tells them sorry for their loss and that she thinks that Big E sucks. This was a nice touch. I like this, right? And then this transitions to Becky Lynch walking out to the ring for the next segment. That's one of the criticisms that I had of the opening segment, right? The opening segment, you had like 3 guys. Each of them is going to have a singles match. So why do they all go backstage? How about one of them just stays there, like maybe Bronson Reed, and he has his match with Jey Uso? Since they're already there, save some time. But they don't want to save time. They want to draw this shit out as much as they can. Becky comes out. She puts herself over saying she's the GOAT and that she should get to pick her own opponent, just like Tiffany Stratton did and just like Io Sky did. This is a good point. You can't argue against this, right? Why the hell do they get the pick, but Becky Lynch doesn't? She's a bigger legend than all of them. At this point, Bayley and Lyra come out. Lyra just calls both of them disappointments. Bayley calls Lyra a little bitch. And they start brawling. Lyra hits Nightwings on both of them, but she doesn't even do the sit out. She basically just grabs them and does a scoop slam. And they're like, Nightwing! You know what I mean? It's just really stupid. But that's how that went down. Backstage. Braun, who's getting a lot of attention in this episode, Braun is upset because Cross took his credit, right? Rollins says nobody likes Cross. And for the first time maybe ever, I agree with Seth Rollins. He's right. Nobody likes Cross. Nobody gives a shit about Cross. Anyways, Heyman tells him that Zayn is out of action indefinitely. And then Seth Rollins says to Bronson Reed, hey, Jey Uso's still standing. And then he says, no, after I'm done with him. So that's something to look forward to, whatever, right? Now it's time for that match. Jey Uso comes out doing his shtick, right? And Bronson Reed comes out doing his shtick too. The match kind of culminates with Bronson Reed sitting his fat ass, although I will say he did look slimmed down. I feel like Bronson Reed is losing some weight, which was good. He's sitting down on effectively like a computer chair, like one of those, rolling chairs that spin as well, right? He's sitting there, he gets super kicked, and then Uso goes to the ring and he's going for the tope suicida. But as he goes for it, Bronson just throws the chair at him, which I thought was pretty cool. You know what I mean? I really enjoyed that. And then he tsunamis him twice, and that's it, right? So Jey Uso, even though he wins the match, he's been neutralized, right? Wins and losses don't matter, and that's fine. It's always been like that, right? Triple H, like, he would get DQ'd in every match he had on Raw, but then he would use that to get the upper hand, which is what Bronson Reed did. So I have nothing against that. I like the chair spot. I think it was Bronson Reed, or maybe it was Braun Strowman, but one of these guys, when they were feuding with each other, I think, they like grabbed like a random black guy from the crowd. Obviously, he was a plant, and they just threw that guy as a weapon, which was one of the most interesting spots I've ever seen in my life. And kudos to that black guy because he sold it really well. And in this case, it was a chair, but it was the same kind of philosophy. He threw something that people don't normally throw that hard, and he took him out, right? So that was kind of nice. I didn't have anything against that, you know what I mean? Then they show some vignettes about what's going to happen in the future, right? This Saturday, we've got Saturday Night Mid-Card, and then after that, we have WWE Evolution. So we got a lot of wrestling this weekend. Ain't nothing wrong with that. They got to point this stuff forward, and they kind of just run down the card, right? The matches we have to look forward to are, of course, Goldberg versus Gunther, and Drew McIntyre versus, who's he wrestling? Randy Orton. And then we've got CM Punk, not CM Punk, Seth Rollins and LA Knight. And then we have the Evolution pay-per-view, which the matches we've kind of already talked about. So that's how that goes down. After this, it's time for El Grande Americano, who is now being played by Ludwig Kaiser, versus Dragon Lee. Dragon Lee, a lot of people don't know this, but I really liked Dragon Lee back in the Indies. I was like, oh, this guy is actually athletic. He does cool shit. But now he's just a jobber, and he's wrestling another jobber dressed as another jobber. So this is almost like humiliating for, Ludwig Kaiser. And the entire point of this is to just have a match. The match is pretty decent, to be honest, but to have a match and to also have the banter between Michael Cole and now it's Corey Graves about whether or not he is or is not Chad Gable, right? Michael Cole makes these dumbass observations. He's like, he doesn't have the tattoo. Corey Graves is like, people get tattoos removed all the time. I had one removed today. What? First of all, only don't. That's a very rare thing, number one. And two, perhaps most importantly, right? It's not that. It's that they're clearly different guys. Like, nobody would be fooled by this. They look nothing alike. And Michael Cole points this out. He's like, this new Grande Americano is about a foot taller. Chad Gable's like 5'7", probably. Realistically, he's probably like 5'5" or 5'6". And, Ludwig Kaiser, for, everything about him, he is like a bigger guy. He's like 6'3". He really is almost 1 foot taller, right? He has a completely different build. You know what I mean? They're both lean, right? So it's not like they put like a mask on Brodus Clay and they're like, it's El Grande Americano, which would have been funnier. But, they went with this. Now, the problem that I have with this, of course, is number one, Michael Cole is like hell-bent on proving that it's not, that it is Chad Gable, right? And for some reason, the other announcer, whether it's Wade Barrett or Corey Graves, they're really hell-bent on saying that it isn't. You don't have a horse in this race, who gives a fuck? The match shouldn't be about whether this guy is or is not Chad Gable. They're trying to prove this, but it's really dumb. How about just say this? I want El Grande Americano to come to my office at 8:30. Chad Gable be there at 8:30, right? Whoever doesn't show up is fired. The end. That's how you prove it. You know what I mean? It's really dumb. This whole they need proof to show that it's the same guy. It's fucking dumb. And also, another thing that I didn't like is under what logic did Ludwig Kaiser agree to do this? He was backstage when Chad Gable was attacked by Penta. So, maybe he donned the mask. Maybe he did it to get an opportunity. That would be a nice little thing. But it's why is everyone okay with it? Another thing is Ludwig Kaiser wrestles like Ludwig Kaiser, but he does do some El Grande Americano moves, including the metal head plate thing. And he does a headbutt, like a Ilya Dragunov type headbutt, and wins, which was nice. At one point, Michael Cole makes a critical error. He's basically Ludwig Kaiser says El Mejor or something in Spanish, right? And, he says it with his voice and his accent. And Michael Cole says, that's not a Spanish accent, right? And then Corey Graves correctly says, wait, so only Hispanics can be luchadors, right? And normally I have to agree with Michael Cole, but the problem is Michael Cole's entire argument is that it's Chad Gable. So, of course, if Chad Gable is El Grande Americano, he's not going to have a Hispanic accent, whether it's Chad Gable or Ludwig Kaiser. So the observation is really stupid. If he had said, wow, this guy sounds like he has a German or an Austrian accent, that would make more sense. But basically he said he doesn't have a Latino accent. Well, El Grande Americano never has had a Hispanic accent because it's been Chad Gable. So it's really stupid, not well thought out by Michael Cole. He makes these mistakes all the time. This guy, I don't think Michael Cole's a complete idiot, but I don't think he's the smartest guy of all time either. I think he just makes too many mistakes for someone to think things through. And the fact that he still doesn't know what an enziguri to the back of the head is just embarrassing, right? It's like you've been doing this for 25 years. Yeah, I watched 2 wrestling matches before I learned what an enziguri is. You know, Michael Cole has watched 25 years. Not watched. He has commentated on 25 years of wrestling. He doesn't know the names of the moves. You know, like neither does Pat McAfee. Like there was a part where like Finn Balor did like the Final Cut or the Nightmare on Helm Street, and he's like, "Ah, Sling Blade." No, it's not a Sling Blade. That's a different move. Like learn the fucking. This is not that hard, man. Learn the fucking moves, bro. This is like baseline shit. So that's why people like Corey Graves appear to be like much better than everybody else, because Corey Graves is smart and he learned the moves. You know, Booker T, he knows the moves because he's a wrestler, but Booker T is just like way better than all of them because he's just more charismatic and he's just a better, like, you know, attention getter, right? Booker T is not as good as Michael Cole or JR or even Corey Graves at calling the match because that's a talent. Like, you need experience in that. And Booker T is like decent at it. He does a good job, I think, but, you know, he's better overall, and that's what matters. So more Booker T, less of these jobbers. After this, we get a segment that nobody expected. Gunther comes out. To be honest, I didn't listen to the promo. I skipped it because I'm pretty sure it's just a Gunther promo of I'm going to win. You know, like, I'm tired of Gunther. He literally is the most boring wrestler I've ever seen in my life. Like, I'm not even joking. I think, like, remember Eric Escobar and Kazarni? Like, they're more entertaining than Gunther. Remember Anarchia from TNA? He's more entertaining than Gunther. Gunther is fucking terrible. He's so boring. He comes out, I'm going to guess what he says. I am the #1 wrestler. I'm going to beat Bill Goldberg, right? And then Goldberg comes out, the crowd loses their mind. They start saying, holy shit, holy shit. Gunther tries to cheap shot him. Goldberg throws a right hand. It looks like shit. Goldberg can barely stand up. This is getting a bit absurd. But he does knock Gunther down. Like, Goldberg at this point is just all aesthetics, right? Like, he looks good still. I mean, he's, you know, he's got like bald spots, like not spots, but like, you know, those like the freckles you get on your bald head when you get older. He's got that, you know, his head looks like Morgan Freeman's face, you know, and he can't do anything about that. So he's looking old. Obviously, his goatee is like white now. You know, he's older. He goes without saying. His physique looks great still, right? Because that's what he trains. He's not out there doing like DDP yoga. If he did that, he'd be more limber, which would be nicer. Goldberg sets up the spear. The fans would have loved this, but Gunther rolls out of the ring. Whatever. You know, I'm not expecting to see a spear for free. If he does that, he might injure himself and the match is off. Who the fuck knows? So he didn't do it, and that's the end of that. It was a nice little segment. In my opinion, in advance, nothing. But I enjoy seeing Goldberg no matter what, right? After this, we've got the main event. Now, this is a main event that I will say is quasi-acceptable. Okay, I explained earlier that even though, in my personal opinion, Seth Rollins is a mid-card jobber, he is presented as a main eventer. So, for better or for worse, that's all that is, right? I don't get to make the choices here. He's presented as he's presented. But Penta is not presented as a main event wrestler. Penta is an undercard nobody, right? He's sometimes a mid-carder. Most of the time, he's out there wrestling the likes of Ludwig Kaiser and Chad Gable, right? He is not a mid-carder. There is no mid-card anymore, right? Like, basically, everyone's a mid-carder, right? But they pretend that they're main eventers. So there is actually no mid-card. There's just the main event, quote-unquote, which to me, I consider the mid-card. And then there's the undercard. Like, the people that, like, you know, for example, Chad Gable is never going to have, like, a meaningful match in his career, right? Like, he's never going to have, like, a real meaningful match. Not like a Sami Zayn versus Gunther. I'm talking about, like, he's never going to be the guy that they put up against Goldberg, right? He's never going to be that guy. He's never going to have a meaningful moment. And you know Penta won't either. You know R-Truth won't either, right? It's like, you know where these people stack. They stack in the undercard, like, for better or for worse. So the match was actually really good. It was really, really entertaining. Penta even hits some of his finishers. He hits the Penta driver. Rollins kicks out. He hits the Canadian Destroyer. Sorry, the Mexican Destroyer. And Seth Rollins grabs the rope. You know, predictably, but nevertheless, like, Penta hit a lot of his big moves. Now, it doesn't matter because, like, you know that Penta's not winning this, right? And that's why I can't give this match a good rating, right? Because if you know what's going to happen, no matter what, you know what's going to happen, right? Like, you know that Seth Rollins is going to overcome Penta. It's just, like, this is one step away from Seth Rollins versus Tozawa. The only difference is that Penta had a good showing, right? I think this was a good thing for Penta. Like, he comes off looking better than he did last week. However, since he has no chance of winning, this match doesn't need to be this long. You know, you had matches like that all the time. Like, there was, like, on the, like, a personal favorite match of mine. It's The Rock versus Val Venus on the Owen Hart tribute show, Rest in Peace, right? Like, Val Venus comes out, and then The Rock comes out. He goes to the top turnbuckle, and he cuts a quick promo. He says, Owen, The Rock knows you want me to beat this Rudy Poo. And then he has, like, a match with Val Venus. Val Venus throws a couple of right hands. The Rock counters an Irish whip, Rock bottom, people's elbow, 1, 2, 3, right? Because you don't need to waste 15 minutes on this. You know that, like, you know, The Rock is going to beat Val Venus. Like, there is no chance There's no scenario in which Val Venus comes out on top, right? You know it. So why would you spend 20 minutes on it? That's the problem with this match. Versus one of my favorite matches literally of all time is at the Eddie Guerrero tribute show, Shawn Michaels versus Rey Mysterio. An absolute classic if you haven't seen it. One of the best matches of all time. Shawn Michaels is obviously one of the greats. Rey Mysterio is obviously one of the greats. Now, on any given night, right, if Eddie Guerrero were still alive, this would be a competitive match, but you know that Shawn Michaels would win. Shawn Michaels has to have competitive matches, especially back then, because Shawn Michaels was out there wrestling people like Kurt Angle, like absolute machines. He was out there wrestling people like Triple H, who are like way bigger than him, people like Kane, people like Batista. He was wrestling big guys. So Shawn Michaels can never have a squash match because he's considered a smaller guy. So even when he wrestles someone small, he can't have a squash match. Similarly, on a throwaway episode of SmackDown, they had a champion versus champion match. When Benoit was the champion, he shows up one time on SmackDown. I think he might have been the US champion at the time, but I think he was the World Heavyweight Champion. And he has a match against Gregory Helms. Right now, Gregory Helms was a cruiserweight. He was the cruiserweight champion. But Gregory Helms is like 6'2", like 215, right? Benoit is like 5'10", 225 maybe, So like, yeah, like Benoit is the heavyweight champion and Gregory Helms is the cruiserweight champion. But in this day and age, like you see Gregory Helms when he comes out with like the producers to break up fights, like him, Kenny Dykstra, these guys are like bigger than Seth Rollins. You know what I mean? Like they are more believable than Seth Rollins, even at this age. So Gregory Helms versus Benoit goes a long time because Benoit, even though he's the heavyweight champion, it has to be believable, right? Benoit can, in a very long and tiresome match, defeat someone, the size of Kane or Albert or Big Show even, right? Or even Lesnar. He can make Lesnar tap out because of what he is, right? Gregory Helms is not that good in terms of kayfabe, but compared to Chris Benoit cannot just squash Gregory Helms, right? Gregory Helms is a champion. You see what I'm saying? So this kind of parody makes sense. But in this match, and I'm sorry for this, long rant, but I want to make my point. In this match, that wasn't present, right? Like there is no chance. There's no chance that Pentagon has against Seth Rollins. And even though they're both of a similar size, there is no chance. There is a tiny chance. There is a tiny, tiny chance that Gregory Helms beats Benoit because, Triple H comes and hits him with a chair or something, right? There's always that possibility because of the implications. But Penta, that's not happening. So basically the match ends with Seth Rollins doing a blatant low blow with his head. So Pentagon is going to get him in the powerbomb position, and Seth Rollins just thrusts upwards and headbutts him in the balls right in front of the ref. Then he says, "Oh, he pulled my hair," which was stupid because you can clearly see that Seth Rollins lunged at his balls. I actually thought he didn't need to explain himself to the ref at all. This is actually a brilliant move. Conceptually speaking, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Just let him powerbomb me? No, I'm going to struggle. And if I struggle between someone's legs, I might headbutt him in the balls, right? And then as a result, that's all it takes. Penta is dead, and then Seth Rollins does a stomp and wins. Then Paul Heyman pulls out his cell phone, calls the bad guys, calls the lackeys, right? This was a stupid thing. Why is he pulling out his cell phone? He can literally just say, "Come on out," right? Like they're all watching TV. They're watching in the back. There's no need for the cell phone. This was so stupid. It's like, these are the kind of things that when I see Paul Heyman do these things, I'm like, this guy just doesn't understand the medium that he's participating in. I know obviously Paul Heyman gets it more than me because he's been in the business for a long time, but it's these little nuances, right? Similarly to what I said earlier about Michael Cole not knowing the moves. He's been in the industry forever, but he doesn't capture everything. Paul Heyman should just be like, "Come on out, guys," right? Or you could just tell them once the match is over, "Come on out." It's exactly what happened. They come out, but as they're making their way to the ring, LA Knight appears out of nowhere, goes in the ring, BFTs Rollins, runs away, the crowd goes nuts, and that's the end of Raw. Now, okay, that's fine. It was a fine ending. But all the things that I said, I think completely ring true. So there you have it. The episode of Raw was mediocre. It did more than other episodes of Raw, but quite frankly, the big guy on Raw now, aside from Seth Rollins, is CM Punk. And CM Punk had no presence there. Gunther, the world champion, hasn't wrestled on Raw since he won the title. I don't think he's wrestled at all since he won the title. And that's unacceptable. He's the world champion. You know what I mean? I know that Seth Rollins is being positioned as the main guy, but he's just the Money in the Bank holder. You know what I mean? What's the point of Gunther being champion? Hopefully, Goldberg just beats Gunther and then Seth Rollins cashes in. I think that would be nice because, let's be real. I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but this title run of Gunther, it's a complete disaster. So there you have it. I still think Goldberg should win anyways, even if Seth doesn't cash in. I think Goldberg, I don't want to say he deserves the title because he doesn't, but I think he would make a better champion than Gunther, even if it's for 1 week. So that being said, motherfucks, that's all I gotta say about Raw. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It wasn't that bad. So that being said, take care of yourselves and go fuck your mothers, motherfucks.